welcome to NOSIS. Thank you for listening. Today we're going to explore the life of somebody else and what you've contributed to that, because this podcast is all about celebrating no shame and struggle. Because a lot of people that have been through struggle obviously turn it into their superpower, make changes, and the person we're going to talk about today was one of those people. So Lamin's done a lot of work surrounding Len Johnson.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know who Len Johnson is, and that's how we managed to connect, because you talk about him a lot and I just found out who he is. So really we want to educate and share the story and then talk a little bit about what you've contributed to that.
Wicked. Yeah, so I'll start off just by briefly telling the story of Len Johnson, and I guess. So for the listeners who've never heard of him, he was a boxer born in Manchester in 1902, so over 100 years ago. He was born to a West African father from Sierra Leone, who was a sailor. I always say this wrong. He was a seaman.
Seaman?
Yeah, a seaman. He was a sailor. That's the right word. He was a sailor, and he came into Liverpool in the late 1800s, and then came over to Manchester and met Margaret Johnson, who was Len's mum, who was Irish and Mancunian, and the dad was from Sierra Leone, so West African. Len was born in 1902 in Clayton in East Manchester, and he grew up in Manchester in the 1900s, where it was predominantly white. It wasn't massively diverse. There would have been a handful of black people who came in from the docks in Liverpool. The mixed race family wasn't necessarily welcomed and accepted at those times, and his mum was actually brutally attacked in the street and scarred for life. And so obviously he grew up fighting. He got a job in a warehouse and got into a fight with a worker one day, and his dad said, right, I'm going to bring you to the boxing gym. His dad run a boxing booth, which was like a touring booth where people would go around and fight, and the winner would kind of get a prize or get some money, and it was kind of like who was the hardest type thing. It's a bit. Was
that kind of underground?
Yeah, underground. Like a boxing booth back then was like the thing, I think.
Right.
So he said, I'm going to bring you to the boxing booth. And I think Len got battered in his first fight, but then he kept coming and he got better and better and better, and he turned professional in the 1920s. And so he would have been around 20 odd years old. And he had a career for 13 years from 1920 to 1933. And he had this unbelievable boxing record. He had 135 professional fights, which is like crazy amount. And he won 93. There's different numbers, like some say 95, some say 93, but I always kind of say 93. Yeah, so I remember when I reading this story of his boxing record thinking, wow, okay, but who did he fight? You know, were they just like local bin men and school teachers and whoever, or were they actually good fighters? And so when I looked into his record, he beat the best of his generation. He fought a guy called Ted Kid Lewis, who was from Essex, who had over 200 fights. You know, the fighters back then, they had way more fights. And they were also 15. They had 15 rounds instead of 12 rounds.
Okay.
So he fought Ted Kid Lewis and he knocked him out in, I think, round 7 in 1925, I think it was. And Mike Tyson, who everyone knows now is one of the hardest, scariest heavyweight boxers of all time, he described Ted Kid Lewis as the greatest fighter to ever come out of Britain. Well, Len Johnson from Manchester knocked him out. So that was how good Len was as a fighter. He fought all the greatest fighters of his generation, but disgracefully, because of his skin colour, he wasn't allowed to box for the British title. And that's maybe why some people don't know his name. It's maybe why his story's been hidden and kept from us from this shameful racist policy. So, the policy stated, it was the British Boxing Board of Control, who are the same governing body now, all these years later, stated to compete for the British title, you had to be born to 2 white parents. So it was about keeping the British Empire white and not having a black man or a mixed race man as someone for people to look up to. He was never allowed to box for the British title. He wrote to the Home Secretary at the time, who was Winston Churchill. He wrote to the British Boxing Board of Control. He had a big fan base in Manchester. He fought all over the country, but he was never allowed to box for the British title. It was the Lonsdale belt, which all these years later, people like Anthony Joshua have boxed for and won.
Right.
And Len would have won, you know, hands down. He would have been a champion and then gone on to do other things. But yeah, he couldn't box for the British title because of Rule 24, which stated you had to have 2 white parents. So he retired in 1933. Demoralised from the sport. He went over to Australia, he won like a Commonwealth title and came back to Britain with this title, and they still didn't recognise him. So he was just like, look, I'm done, there's nothing more for this sport that I can do. He had an eye injury as well. And yeah, he had this unbelievable record, ended with, like I said, 135 fights, 93 wins, retired in 1933 and hung up his gloves. But in that time, while he was travelling the world fighting, went to New York, went to Australia, he met someone called Paul Robeson, who I kind of say is like the Drake of today. But he was probably more than that. He was like a superstar. He was a singer, an actor, an activist. He was he had this famous deep voice. He came to the UK. He was a black guy. And Len Johnson struck up a relationship with Paul Robeson. And Paul Robeson said to him, you need to continue fighting outside the ring. And that's exactly what Len did. So he became a massive civil rights campaigner and activist in Manchester. He set up the new international club in Moss Side with his two friends, Sid Booth and Wilf Charles, where they offered growing advice to the growing black community in South Manchester in Moss Side. And it was about like employment and helping people in work and just helping people live in Britain in the 1930s. He helped campaign for black workers who got sacked from a shipping company. So a shipping company in North Manchester sacked loads of black workers. They must have had to make cuts, and they just decided we'll get rid of all the black staff.
Right.
And Len Johnson heard about it and turned up and rallied all the white staff to stand in solidarity with the black staff and step down until the black staff got their jobs back, and the shipping company reversed their decision and gave them the jobs back, which I thought was an amazing part of the story. And you just think, I wonder how many other battles he was involved in that we don't know about and just weren't documented. Yeah, he set up the new international club. He attended the 5th Pan-African Congress in 1945, which was held in Manchester, which was like future leaders of African nations and African countries who all came to Manchester, which is another mad story and mad history. Leaders of Ghana and South Africa and all over, they came to Manchester to meet because they knew Manchester was a radical city and it was a forward-thinking, progressive city. And also in the slave trade, factory workers refused to touch cotton that had been picked by slaves. Right. And so Abraham Lincoln specifically thanked the people of Manchester for part of that kind of process of the abolition of slavery. So they were just white working class people from Manchester. They might have been Irish immigrants, they might have had, different blood, but they put their jobs on the line in to make a stand. So that was beautiful. So yeah, he attended the 5th Pan-African Congress and helped organise that, and he was a forward thinker. He stood for local election over like 7 times in Moss Side. He never won. There was no chance like a black man was going to win back in those times, but he did stand. And he was a constant kind of presence in the community, and he was obviously famous for being a boxer. He was working as a bus driver in his later years. Famously in 1953, he went into a pub in Hume, the old Abbey Tap House, and they refused to serve him a drink. Obviously back then there was like no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, but there was an unofficial colour bar policy, which was basically if the landlord or landlady doesn't want to serve you because you're black, they can say, I'm not serving you, get out.
Exactly.
And he rocked up with his friends. And he was teetotal. He ordered a pint of lemonade and the landlady said, I'm not serving you. He then left and came back with 200 people, black and white, united. And the Lord Mayor and the Bishop at the time protested outside the pub. And then that overturned the colour bar policy in that pub. And then that spread across the rest of the UK. So, yeah, he just had this unbelievable story. That's me telling you the story in 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Or how quick that was.
A snapshot.
Yeah, it's a snapshot of someone's life. He passed away in 1974 in Oldham. Relatively poor, ill health. Obviously, he had a tough career, tough life. So yeah, he died relatively unknown even in the 70s. He wasn't like a famous guy, but he had this unbelievable story. And all these years later, we just wanted to recognise it. I remember when I read the article on his life for the first time in 2020, I just couldn't believe it. I'm a massive boxing fan. I've grown up in boxing gyms since I was 8 years old. I'm West African. I'm Mancunian. You know what I mean?
The
story resonated with me. But I think even no matter where you're from, people read the story and they connect with it. We love our unsung sporting heroes in Manchester, and I think he's definitely one of them. So, yeah.
So why do you think it's been... I was going to ask you, how did you said you came across the story when you first read it. Was it something you were sent? Was it something you fell across? How did you come about the information?
Yeah, so I was sent it in a WhatsApp group. It was in the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think everyone was... Obviously, we was all in lockdown. Everyone was like hyper-politicized, and we was all kind of like, as black people or people from the black diaspora, we was all reflecting on our own journeys and our own kind of existence in Britain and in the West. Yeah, I just got sent this WhatsApp article, and I vividly remember I would have been 24 at the time, 23 or 24, and I sat in bed just reading this article, and I'm not a strong reader, I've got ADHD, so I can't like sit and like read something. But I just read this whole article. It was in the Tribune magazine, written by Len Johnson and Marcus Barnett, who are now integral parts of the campaign. And I read this article and I was just glued to the screen. Because like I said, I'm a boxing fan. I'm kind of politically tapped in, and just the story. I was like, I've had a picture of Mohammad Ali above my bed since I was 7, 8 years old. He's always been like a hero because of what he did in the ring and outside of it. It's like he transcended the sport of boxing. And it's like we had our very own Muhammad Ali in Manchester this whole time. Exactly. And that's kind of one of the slogans I always say, like, he's the Mancunian Muhammad Ali, essentially. Because he was more than just a boxer. So, yeah, I just remember being absolutely, like, inspired, but then very, very quickly, in the same emotion, was enraged. Because I was like, how have I not known this story? How has this story been hidden? And how is he not a household name? At least in Manchester.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But he should be a household name in the UK and, in fact, the world. And then it makes you wonder how many other stories, how many other untold stories are out there that we need to uncover.
There we go.
Do you know what I mean?
I think that's the start of this work, really. For me, I found the story in amongst the archives in Central Library. I'd started looking at Kath Locke, who was another activist. She was a little bit later, but Len Johnson came into that, and there's so many sort of those kind of stories in those archives. So if anybody who is interested in looking a little bit more into culture and Black history, get to the Race Relations Centre in Manchester Central Library, because there's a lot there. There's a lot to go through. And I think we're just uncovering the tip of the iceberg. The stories that have made it out into publications, literature, obviously the archives. We know that there's so more, because when I read Roots Oral History Project, it's going to be like transcripts of conversations. People have gone around and recorded conversations. And from what they say in those recordings, you can then look at the stories that surround that. Got to search for them, though. So it's why have they been hidden? And what do you think? What do you think?
I think it's purposeful.
I do
It's
too.
purposeful.
It's
There's no way, they don't, like, I wasn't taught Black history in school.
No.
The only Black history I was taught was your people were slaves. And in fact, Kunta Kinte comes from Gambia, which is where I'm from. And so I was like, oh, mad, my people were slaves. And the first slave ship came in down the Gambian River and into Gambia and da-da-da-da. And so that was all I was taught. I remember in history just putting my head on my desk and going to sleep.
Yeah, I felt like, get me out of this classroom. I went to a private school. I was in a classroom full of white children. I'm the minority in that class. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. And then they're telling me, this is your history. We're reading books like Of Mice and Men with the N-word flats all around it. We've got to read it out loud. I thought, the ground needs to swallow me up, get me out of here. It felt horrible. And then it was like I could hear sniggers in the classroom and it just felt really, I felt attacked, I'm not going to lie. So I think the Abyssindi Cooperative, the group that Kath Locke was part of, they put in things that were going to solve these problems. So they were doing supplementary schools on a Saturday. Sort of one thing that she said, the kids would come in, be trodden, their shoulders were down.
But they'd leave. And
then they left with the head held high, the shoulders open. And that's because they got the keys to the culture. Because history's important.
It is. I think seeing yourself reflected in the history books is just so important.
Right.
And going, oh yeah, we were more than just enslaved people.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And we're more than what the media try and paint you out to be. And we were the forward thinkers and the leaders of, past generations. So seeing yourself reflected in the history books is massive. And I think, just feeling inspired is important, especially as a young person. Do you know what I mean? And I just feel like the education system in the UK is so purposely, like, systematically racist.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, black boys are 3 times more likely to be kicked out of school, for example. You're not getting education that you feel is fulfilling. So, you might misbehave, but then also they're targeted and told you're aggressive and this and that. But if you sit them down and tell them stories and that they might connect with, you might get a slightly different reaction.
Exactly.
So,
and it has a knock-on effect, I think, because obviously the story of Len Johnson, for example, it's not just that there's young boys missing out on the story. It's actually that generation of people, men, haven't had their financial flowers as well. Because imagine how a white guy,
he'd be a millionaire. Len Johnson would be, if he boxed now, he'd be a millionaire.
And that's just one out of all of these people. Later, imagine the financial, economical damage that's been done. And it's like, if black people are trying to set things up, it's been, it's been broken down. So I think that's why now, while we're at a point where we have the resources, we've got the exposure, I think really for me, people need to get independent and start doing things that's like collective, and that's something that's
you've got like the team, for example, like Melanin Markets, what they're doing in Manchester, like that's massive. Just championing black-owned business in Manchester, and it's just being loud and proud about it. I remember in 2020 there was a thing Black Pound Day. Do you remember that?
Yeah, remember.
Where it was like on every Sunday, the first Sunday of each month, just spend your money in black businesses.
Right.
Because we need to build up the economy in the UK,
Yeah.
the black economy, if that makes sense. Because we've kind of been used and used and used, whether it's in performance or in sport or in entertainment. But then it's like, well, what have you got to show for it, really?
Right.
You don't just want to be like a porn.
Small
Do you know what I mean?
of an entertainment fee or whatever.
So yeah, I think it's the story. Whenever I think about the story of Len Johnson, I always remember how radical it is, but also how so many people, the masses, can connect with it. Like, it is a deep story, like the racism he had to go through, and obviously people now can sit there and go, "Wow, that was mad." He wasn't allowed to box for a British title because he had like black family members and he was half black, and it's like people can acknowledge that that's crazy. But then, if we were to go, okay, what would Len Johnson think in 2024? Would he think how far we've come forward? You know, when we go into schools and deliver the play, which I'll get onto, we always ask that, what would he think now in 2024? You'd go, okay, yeah, black people can fight for the British title now, okay, great, or black people can do this, or da-da-da, but there's still a long way to go.
Right.
And there's a lot of systems to break down, and the fact that this story is hidden is one of those systems to try and break down.
Yeah, because I think also, you can even see it now with like the riots, everything that's happening. Some people are gobsmacked. They're like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. And I'm like, this has been happening. The colour bar exists as much as it's
and
like...
the unofficial colour bar still exists now. When I was younger, I don't really go to the club anymore, but when I was younger, we had to split up. If there was 5 of us, we'd go, right, you two go, and then we'll go with these 2. And you had to
grab a girl.
So the fact that you couldn't go in a group of 5 black guys because it'd be seen as too... Oh, it's too intimidating, it's too threatening, it's too much, and you'd split up and go in 2s. It's crazy.
That is actually
that's all these years later. So you think, okay, it's not changed that much.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I remember getting grabbed. Can you come in with us? Let's split up and just get him with a girl. And it's probably, obviously, I'm black as well, but I think what you're trying to say is that they're thinking it's too thuggish, it's going to be trouble. I remember one time I was in a club and the doors actually got rushed, and then I got pulled out by police. They got me on the floor. Like, there was fully, like, knees on my back in front of people. I didn't rush the doors. I didn't jump on. I was just telling him that someone that they've pulled out, you've obviously got the identity wrong because that person did not jump the doors. They've been with me. But then I tried to take it further and they were like, oh no, we don't do claims against the police. I was trying to, go a bit legal with it because I actually got scarred from that. But at that time, I'm going back about 8 years. They were like, no, nothing we can do. So I think you've got to pick your battles.
100%. 100%. I think education, for me, is the biggest battle. It's the biggest tool. It's the biggest weapon that's kind of used against us, but we can also use in our own favour.
And that's what we need to do. It's like reversing the tactics. And you say you're going in schools with a play. Talk to me about what you're...
Yeah, I mean, I was in school. I came out of school with 2 GCSEs. I got drama and PE. That was it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not an academic person, but I went on to get a scholarship and go to drama school and da-da-da-da. But I'm not an academic. But for me, that's because the British education system didn't suit me.
Right.
It didn't work in my favour. So I was kind of, do you know what I mean? It was all just stacked against me even when I went in there. And obviously your first 16 years of your life, you're just in that system, aren't you? Or 18 if you go to college. Basically, when the Len Johnson story, when I read the article, my brain just went straight into drive mode of how are we going to get this name out there, how are we going to make him a household name and just tell this story everywhere. There was a few little blog posts online and it was a need to know basis. Some of your OGs would know about him or people who might have actually known his family or friends. So one thing that kicked in was okay, I'm an actor, storytelling's powerful. It can be educational and inspiring. And I called Odd Arts, who are a theatre charity based in Moss Side, or they're in Hume now. And I just pitched it to them. I said, look, I think we need to tell this story of Len Johnson. We need to tell the story of Len Johnson. We created the play. Curtis Cole, who's actually he's got Sierra Leone heritage and he's from Moss Side. So the comparisons there are amazing. He's a mixed race guy himself. He wrote the play. And we started taking it into schools in 2021. Yeah, 2021. So we pitched it in 2020, 2021, and it's been going into schools ever since. And it's been delivered to over 5,000 young people. And it just tells them the story of Len Johnson. And then we get up there, we do a bit of forum theatre. And it's just amazing. Every time we go and do it, and it's kind of, it's self-sufficient. It's Tameside Council booked it, spent £30,000 funding. To take it into primary schools around there. And, I did a thing earlier this year in the middle of Moss Side at the football pitch there. I can't remember what it's called. What's it called? It's where City used to be, the Platt Lane. Went to Platt Lane, and I went in to tell the story of Len Johnson and invite the kids to this event. And there was probably about 50 kids. And I just remember saying, right, okay, put your hand up if you know who Muhammad Ali is. And they all put their hand up. And even that, I thought they were only young. I thought they might not even know who Ali is. He died a long time ago now, like 8 years ago. And I said, right, now put your hand up if you know who Len Johnson is. About half the kids put their hand up. And I couldn't believe it. Because for years, you'd go into rooms, you tell the story, you might speak to a room of people and go, right, put your hand up if you know who Ali is. Everyone puts their hand up, obviously. And then I said, right, put your hand up if you know who Len Johnson is. Everyone's kind of just looking round. But when all these young kids in Moss Side put their hand up, I thought the story's spreading. And they'd all learnt about it in the local school in St Mary's or whatever school they attended. And I just thought, wow, okay, the story's spreading. It was a special day. I messaged the WhatsApp group as soon as it happened. I was like, guys, this is getting out there. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, the play is a massive part of it. And like I said, education's so powerful. And I think that's probably one of the most, it's one of the greatest achievements of the campaign. I've not even spoken about the campaign. So the campaign is to actually build a statue of Len Johnson. Pride of place in the city centre. And it'd be the first statue of a black person in Manchester.
That's insane.
Shocking.
Absolutely
which is shocking.
Insane.
And I wasn't like big on statues, but obviously in 2020 the conversation was had with what statues are getting pulled down,
right.
which ones should be getting erected. And so like, was it Colston in Bristol got pulled down?
Yeah,
by a slave owner.
Right, as they say.
Well,
but
it was
it's
Black Lives
actually
Matter protesters,
demonstrations.
and it was like, we don't want a slave owner who profited off slavery and was like a brutal person to be like lauded up as a statue. And they pulled it down and dashed it in the water, rightly so, which is amazing. I remember watching it. And yeah, so in the Tribune magazine, the article that I read, it was part of that mentioned there's a statue campaign. So I reached out to them. I said, look, I need to get involved and help make this happen. So yeah, the play, is a massive part of the campaign, but the statue campaign, it's in a really good direction. So yeah, it's going to be a moment for the city for sure. And
you're doing a lot really around that as well. So we talked about your schools, what you bring us to the children, the next generation. I think educating them is really powerful because I think equipping them with the knowledge that, okay, we're not downtrodden.
Yeah.
If people come together, I think one thing that I do love about Len Johnson as well, he brought people from different backgrounds.
He was mixed race. I think it's one of those things where he united black and white. His mum was white, his dad was black, and so he had family members of both races, so he brought people together. And I think that's the main thing. Black and white have to unite. You see the stuff with the riots now, and I just think, these people are failed in society. They've been let down by the ruling classes, by the top 1%, by the government. And what the governments want is to divide and conquer.
And set them against each other.
And set us against each other and go, take your anger out on the nearest person to you next door, the refugee moving in next door, or the immigrant who owns that shop and who's got this and da-da-da-da. And you just think this country was built on immigration.
Right.
This country, immigrants fought for this country in the World Wars. 2.1 million Indian soldiers in World War II, 500,000 African soldiers in World War II. They don't get any thanks.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They were volunteer soldiers. They didn't even get paid. That's been proven.
And most people were asked to come over here.
And then to rebuild the country, build the NHS and everything else, and to keep this country what it is. You think of the Premier League, everyone who tunes in and watches football every week, it's made up of immigrants. There's hardly any English players in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? And you just think, so, but I understand their anger because they've not got work opportunities. They can't get to the dentist or healthcare. They've not got good schooling. They're downtrodden and their communities are left to rot. So of course it makes sense to take your anger out on the nearest person to you, but we need them to try and spin.
Algorithms are feeding them, because I'm backing that they're being fed.
Of course.
Fed. There's no chance they're just going to be like, oh, it's their fault from nowhere.
No,
it takes time.
People like Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage and the media, they all push this agenda of immigrants are coming over, refugees are taking our jobs, are taking our houses, they're coming, stop the boats, that whole agenda. Refugees make up 0.1% of this country. 0.1%, that's people seeking refuge, people risking their lives to get in a small dinghy and cross the ocean. Do you know how dangerous that is? You're not going to do that just to come and steal someone's job. You're doing it to get a better life, to live. And,
survive,
people should be able, there needs to be safe routes for people to travel into this country. And yeah, it's scary times, but divide and conquer's worked for hundreds and probably thousands of years. And for me, I just think differently too. I'm not angry at those people. I don't get me wrong, if you're shouting racist abuse and you're trying to cause physical harm to me, there's a problem.
Right.
But or to anyone for that matter. But I understand why you're taking to the streets and you're angry.
Yeah,
you just need to redirect your anger.
Yeah.
And we need to work together. And, in America, they killed Fred Hampton, a young Black Panther, because he wanted to unite everyone. He had a rainbow coalition of Mexicans, Spanish, Blacks, Whites, everyone from different backgrounds all together to turn on the system. And they killed him.
Do you think that's why some people hold back this kind of work?
Of course. They hold back and they keep their mouth shut because it's scary to sometimes express yourself, or people don't want to step out of line. You have probably our older generations who they'll go to work, they'll just keep quiet and they're just grateful to be here because it's that mentality of, I had this conversation with my friend, his mum's older Jamaican lady, and it's like, she'll fall in line. She won't criticise because it's like in their head, it's like they're a guest here.
Yeah.
My dad's kind of similar, like he's been here since the mid-90s, but he'll just fall in line. He won't he's got his opinions, he's got his political views and they align with me, but he won't go out and shout about them because there's that mentality of, we're guests, we're our generation, we're born and raised here. Mm-hmm. So we're in the belly of the beast and we want to criticise and we will. And we're entitled to because we're born here and this is our country just as much as it's anyone else's. But obviously it's difficult to have pride with a country where there's so much racism and hatred and division and also a brutal racist colonial past, which we've got to be open and honest about. Mm-hmm. And there's like a denial in there. There's like, the elites and stuff. There's just a denial. Yeah. And it's like, go return all the stolen jewels to Africa, give reparations for slavery, then we can start to talk about growth. But I don't think they're really on that. So we've got to do what we can do in our communities.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Len Johnson story is a perfect way to open up that dialogue.
And campaigns and things like that. Do you ever do something where, like, getting petitions signed? Have you ever done anything like that? Because I wonder, is there really power in that?
Yeah, there's definitely power in it. There's power in the people, innit? The people have the power. I think when people realise, like, we're the majority, then people will start to wake up and go, with collective action, we can achieve anything.
Yeah, because it's down to us.
It's down to us. We're just, a lot of people are sheep in it, so, and we're all guilty of it. But I just think, there's so much power in the people, and you see it when people come together. And, social media gets a lot of slack and a lot of criticism, and rightly so, because it is a toxic, dangerous place. Yeah. And now it's even more dangerous than ever, like Twitter and misinformation and fake news spreading everywhere. You look at the riots, a young British boy with a Christian background killed all those kids in Southport, which is shocking, a horrible, heinous crime. And they went and attacked a mosque because they thought, or they got told, he's an immigrant, he come over here last year and he's a Muslim, so let's go and attack the mosque. Even if he was a Muslim, they shouldn't be attacking the mosque in the first place because that one person's action doesn't represent a whole religion.
Right.
But it just goes to show the misinformation that they spread can cause mass riots on the streets. So social media is dangerous, but also social media has its pros because you can achieve so much through it, and you can see what happens. People can be held to account on social media, businesses, employers, schools. Right. So many campaigns can pick up off social media. So there's pros and cons, just like anything. I think there's pros and cons. So yeah, I
think people don't really use hashtags as well as they could either, because I think hashtags is a way to, if you was to create a code and you was like, right, if you're in on this and you want to see this kind of content, you have to follow this hashtag.
Yeah.
Follow it, and that's your code to share information.
It's powerful. Social media is definitely powerful.
We just use it in a consumer way, mainly.
Yeah,
but I see things for
different.
Yeah, I see like Instagram as a database because there's bare data on there.
Yeah, we've just got all our details.
But we've got the code, and if we want to make a code to create a following, to create a community, the hashtags are there, basically. I've always thought that was a good way to do it. But I wanted to talk to you as well about your football matches. You you do events, you do football matches. So talk to me about those, please.
So it's a bit mad. So basically, I'll give you like the lowdown in it of the whole journey. So events never used to be my thing. I was an actor. I am a professional actor. I graduated when I was 21 in 2017. And I was just focusing on my acting career. And then obviously in 2020, I kind of just made a commitment to myself after the killing of George Floyd. Obviously we were all sat in the house. We was in lockdown, so it was even more intense, weren't it? And like the emotions that it provoked in a lot of us. I made a commitment to myself to just kind of, really kind of be on this activism stuff and where I can support or go to protests or speak at protests, I will. And I started speaking at protests, and then I started kind of getting into events and planning like a family-friendly like anti-racist event in Hume Park, for example, was like the first thing I did with Stand Up to Racism. And then the events have started to grow and grow and grow. And then, yeah, the football match, I was at FC United at stadium, just sat there. I had, you know, you have like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, we could put on a game for Len Johnson here and like raise funds for the statue. I was like, that'd be good. And this is in like 2021. And I was just there. It was just an idea. And then I went away. I was doing work and whatever. And then 2022 come round, back end of 2022, and I was like, right, we're going to do it next year. We're going to do it in 2023. And I reached out to the club at FC United, a club that I grew up supporting, was a massive fan. Used to work for the club, used to volunteer. They put me through my coaching badges. Sat down with them, told them the Len Johnson story, and said, look, there's a campaign to build a statue. We could do a fundraiser match. We've got a lot of contacts, a lot of friends, a lot of people that we can reach out to in the community and in the city. And we'll do like Len Johnson celeb team versus FC United legends. And we did it in 2023. It was like one of the greatest days of my life. It was like months of hard work, and it all just stemmed from an idea. So to see it manifest in real life was like a crazy moment. And to see all those people come out for Len Johnson, for the story, to knowing that their money's going directly to the statue, was like an unbelievable moment. So yeah, we got over 1,000 people in the stadium. Andy Burnham played. Anthony Crowley, who's a former world champion, came down. H was in the crowd. We had loads of actors off Hollyoaks, Coronation Street, Waterloo Road, football freestylers, like influencers. It was just a crazy day. We lost. It was a great game. It was 3-3. Went to penalties, and I was like, okay, we've got something special here. We can build this and grow it. And we did exactly that. And then so that was in 2023. Had a few months off, went and did work and stuff. And then in 2024, we started with the next game and was like, we're going to make an annual event. And we did it this year. It was a massive success. It was huge. It was stressful, like really stressful this year. It wasn't as enjoyable, but it was still an amazing experience for the crowd. Like we had a much bigger crowd. We had just under 2,000 people came out. Huge names, Premier League footballers, all sorts. It was massive, and we raised more money. So that was the main aim, but also the awareness and just seeing all those young people come out and enjoy themselves was amazing.
I was going to ask you, a lot of people hear stories and they'll get that fire in the belly and be like, I feel some kind of way about this. But where did you get the fire that made you move forward with it? Are your parents like that?
Yeah, I think my parents are like that. In the sense, my mum's definitely like that, and she used to take us to protest when we was younger and stuff. So we was kind of in a fairly political family. Like went on the anti-Iraq war protest when I was like 7 in London, for example. But I think I'm just a fighter naturally. Like from young, I was always fighting as a kid, and then I grew up in boxing gym, so I'd always had loads of energy to like expel physical energy, and then like that just became like a mindset thing. I think like you just fight, and so. You know, for example, I'm an actor. You've got to be so resilient to do that because you go into auditions, you're never competing, you're competing with yourself, but you're going for auditions and you're getting told no, rejection. Yeah. And then you get a job and then and the ball keeps rolling. Do you know what I mean? So it's just a mindset. You know, I went through things in my life where you just have to just push. And, you know, if you feel some kind of way, you've got to push. You've got to push for that. I was involved in a campaign, not spoke about it for years. I try not to even think about it these days. But when I was in drama school, I got mad racist abuse from a fellow pupil who said she didn't want to work with me and my friend because we were black. She didn't want to work with us on screen, which is crazy. This is in 2016 at the time. And I remember just being like baffled by this kind of mindset. And the school turned around and said what she said wasn't racist. And so that was my first kind of introduction to institutionalised racism when I was like 19 years old. The school turned around and said it wasn't racist, what she said, and then went on to target me because I made a complaint and they tried to kick me out and it was all mad and I got proper targeted and it was crazy. And then like in my 3rd year, they tried to like block all my success, block me from, you know, going up for roles. I had an audition for the BBC. They said, no, I can't go.
Got blacklisted.
Yeah, I literally got blacklisted. A director that I've done a lot of work with now actually said when he turned up at the drama school, they put a red cross through my name. The school told him not to work with me. So I couldn't believe what was happening. But thankfully, because I'm a fighter naturally, I was like, I'm not having this, I'm not accepting this. Like I was this close to dropping out and just like sacking it all off because it breaks you like you mentally. But I stuck with it. And I remember I had an audition for this BBC show and it was my first ever audition. I didn't even sign with my agent at this point, and the school said you can't go to the audition, but thankfully the casting director was like, do a self-tape. So I did a self-tape, got the job, boom, went and got the job. I was like, fuck you. So I got the job, I was like, okay, amazing. And then I started working. My first 4 jobs were all at the BBC, even when I was in my 3rd year, in my final year. So my thing was, I want to kill them with success, and I'm going to go off and be successful. And at the right time, I'll expose the school and call them out for what they did to me and to my fellow pupils and fellow black students, because it wasn't just me.
Right.
It wasn't just my experience. The school's a massive drama school in London, but we went to the one up north. They had 2 campuses. My thing was about, okay, let me just deal with this situation and get through it. And in 2020, this was my first ever campaign, like if you want to call it a campaign. And it was a successful one. And I think that gave me loads of confidence to go on and do other things. So basically, we called out the school in 2020. In the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, everyone was reflecting on their own experiences. We called out the school. The school was called ALRA, the Academy of Live Recorded Arts in London and in Wigan. And we called for a complete wipeout of all the senior leadership. And we got every single one of them gone.
Really?
Every last one of those teachers who was there at the school. Yeah. So I kind of led that campaign with some friends and other people who were at the school, other pupils. And it went viral. It went everywhere, all over Twitter, it went all over ITV, all over the news stage and all this. And it was crazy. It was like a proper intense 6 months of just like banging this drum, doing interviews, calling them out for what they did to us. And then the school were like trying to like duck and dive and have meetings and board meetings and all this stuff. And then, in the January 2021, the email came through that the principal of the school, who was like the kind of evil mastermind of it all, he was gone. And then about a year after that, the whole school shut down. Mad. Which was mad, which we didn't want that. We didn't want the school to shut down. The school's been around since the 70s. But that is what happened, exactly. That's what happens when you come up against, people who feel passionate about and just being treated equally. Exactly, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, so years later, I think like 4 years after the incident, the school came out and said, okay, what that people did say to you was racist. And it's like, well, obviously I don't need you to tell me that. Do you know what I mean? She said she didn't want to work with us because of our skin colour. So that was like our first campaign, and it was the first kind of taste of kind of going up and like having a goal, going up against a big establishment or an institution, taking them on. We did an open letter where there was like 13 students from all the way back from 2005 to present day. So it would have been 2020. Just talking about their experience, the race, I'm going to have to send it you. Really? But at the school, so like what the staff put them through. And just there, it was like a proper traumatic time. But that we grew from that, like you said, it became like a superpower. Right. And so at the same time, when that campaign was happening, the Len Johnson story came to me. So I had this mad negative campaign where it was like war, you're at war with them, to this amazing, powerful, inspiring story of a fighter, of a boxer, of an activist, of a civil rights campaigner in Manchester. So that was kind of like a refreshing, positive campaign. And that was a negative one. But once that was done and it was successful, it was like, we've done it. So now I feel like I can do anything. Right. And I think that's probably where the whole, like the celebrity football match thing came from. Because we have ideas all the time. But then actually seeing it through is a whole nother thing. So exactly. It just grew massively in confidence in terms of, feeling like a power. Yeah,
because you was in the right position. It's like a calling at that time. I feel like had you not have had that negative experience, you might not have been so primed for the next.
But also, my thing was, I'm going to get as successful as I can. And when I'm at the top of my career, I'm going to call them out. That was my plan. That was just my coping mechanism to get through the career. So when I was, for the 4 years where I was out of drama school working, every job I would tell them about my experience. Like, where did you train, Lamin? I'd tell them. And they'd go, how was it? And I'd tell them. Do you know what I mean? And that was just me kind of coping with it. But when it came in 2020, I wasn't in a big position in my career. I hadn't done any TV work at that point. It was just through the universe and the whole Black Lives Matter movement and the killing of George Floyd and people really waking up and seeing people's experiences. If that was a year or two later, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. Yeah. We would have put a few tweets out and it would have just disappeared.
Because the voice was up.
Yeah. Everyone, it was just lifted. It was
just, you could hear it. It was lifted. More exposure.
Exactly. So we kind of got lucky. We kind of got lucky, but we had to shoot our shot. We shot our shot and we didn't miss. And then thankfully I grew from that and my career went up where it went. So yeah.
Amazing. Would you say there's been any alignment with what you do outside, off the set, and what you do on set, or is it separate ventures?
I don't know. Like my acting work, I just do whatever work comes up type thing.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Theatre and TV, I'll do whatever the job is, whatever the character is, I'll do it. But obviously, you want to do powerful stories, and if I get the opportunity to do them, I'll be doing them. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
there might be a Len Johnson film as well, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah. So I won't say too much. I won't be playing him, but there might be a Len Johnson film. So
okay.
And that's like, it'd be like a big £12 million budget, massive feature film. So that'd be amazing.
And is this all funding? Do you apply for funding?
It's not me who's doing it. It's not me. So a production company in London have obviously found the story in 2021, and they've found the writer to write this film. And yeah, I mean, it could be huge if it goes into cinemas, and it could be a massive film. Obviously, it's an amazing story. People connect with it. So yeah, the film could be phenomenal if it happens, and it'll just help elevate the story, help elevate the campaign. There's loads of stuff about him online now. If you type it on YouTube or on Google, there's loads, which is amazing. That's what we wanted.
And you're making it happen.
We are indeed.
Breaking Bars the other night.
Breaking Bars, that's another thing.
I've actually been there, but it was a great night. How long has it been running for?
So Breaking Bars came in 2021. We'd just done an event in Hume with Stand Up to Racism, in Hume, he was basically taking the knee on Stretford Road for 18 months every single Wednesday. And it became kind of like the heart of the activism, and kind of like a hub for us to just talk and organise and express ourselves. We put the event on, and then we went to the Old Abbey Tap House, and there was like a drink for Len Johnson. So we obviously went there, spoke there, whatever. And there was family members there and friends of Len, and it was just like a beautiful event. And that was in October 2020. And then the following year, we did another drink for Len, and I was like, listen, I've got some poet friends and musicians, I'll get them to come perform. So we did it, and it was just this beautiful, like, low-key, on the cobbles where it was the other night. And there was a youth group who came down, and it was just a beautiful day, and it was just nice, like music and poetry, it all just clicked in nicely. And then Rachel, who run the pub at the time, who's an amazing woman, she called a meeting with myself, Roots, who's an artist who performed the other night, and Renee Storms, who works at Reform. Big up, Renee. And we had this meeting, and she was like, why don't you have your own night called Breaking Bars? And I was like, what a name for starters. I can't claim the name at all, as much as I'd love to. Can't claim it. It was her name. And it was to do with breaking the colour bar. So obviously Len overturned the colour bar at that pub. And so to think all these years later, 100 odd years later, we're back there now with a diverse crowd, with a predominantly, black artist. We work with people from the diaspora mostly. We have had a white artist as well, don't get twisted. It's like, it's a night for everyone.
That's important though.
It's important.
I think what I really loved was the diversity, not only of the crowd, but of the artists.
Yeah.
Because we have to be representative.
Yeah.
And unless we start showcasing that, then we're feeding into the problem of that division. So I think that's a beautiful thing about that event.
So we did it in 2021, and it was proper nerve-wracking because it's like, I've never had a house party. Have you had a house party before? Like your own house party? Have you? So if I had a house party, I'd be stood there nervous, like, are people going to turn up? Are they going to come? It's that type of vibe, innit? And it's like, so with an event, you kind of sat there like, are people going to turn up? Are people going to come? Like, is it going to be awkward for the artists? Because I'm not an event organiser. I'm an artist myself, so I can relate to the artist and go, okay, you don't really want to perform to an empty room. If you have to, you will, but you don't want to. And so I've always kind of looked at it as like, we want to make the artist feel as warm as possible and wrap as much energy around that space for them to bounce off. But the first event went amazing, and then we was like, right, we'll just keep doing them every month. We'll just do them monthly, like once a month or whatever. And then we did one in 2022, and then 2022 was special. Like, we just got into a rhythm where we did, I think, 8 shows in that year, or 7 or something like that. And we had loads of artists supporting it. We told them the story, told them about the event, what it's for, and everyone was just supporting it. And the crowds were coming, they were getting bigger and bigger, and the shows were getting better and better. And they were, like, special in 2022. Like, the shows were amazing. And then we continued it into 2023, and we just continued the rhythm, and we continued it into 2024. So, yeah, it's just been unbelievable. Like, it's a night of live music to celebrate Len Johnson, but it's more than that. It's kind of showcasing local artists. It's giving a platform to artists to perform to their music to new audiences, and it just feels like it's a great night. And we just want to keep building it and growing it. And we did a show at Band on the Wall last year, which was our first time venturing out of the pub, which was nerve-wracking, but it went amazing. It was our 2nd year anniversary show. And all the artists, a lot of the artists that we've worked with all came down and supported and performed, and yeah, it's just an amazing night. So I think the event side of things has just grown, and it's like I don't get paid for it. I don't get paid a penny for it. It's completely voluntary. All the artists get paid, which we make sure. That was something that we felt passionate about in terms of people getting paid for their talent. As an actor, when I got my first paycheck, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I'm getting paid to do what I love. Like, it's an amazing feeling. So we want to be able to replicate that feeling for artists. And a lot of the artists have already been paid serious, though, for shows that they've done. But we're just making sure everyone's getting paid. DJs, artists, when they come through, they're getting paid. So the venue, do you know what I mean? That happens.
Because even though the root of this cause is kind of charitable, you still want to make sure that it's
important. It's just what it does, I think, is it elevates people, and they go, okay, I can do this. I can get paid to do what I love, and hopefully it gives them the momentum to go on and do other things.
Setting standards.
It's just community, and it's love. It's championing artists and championing our community. So it just feels amazing. I was nervous the other night. I was proper nervous. Yeah, because it's not done one for months.
Okay.
Yeah, not done one for months because we'd focused on the Len Johnson match, which took a lot of our time this year. Then we did 2 events for Palestine. We did one at the Neenagh Centre in Hume. We did one at the Old Abbey. So just to fundraise for Palestine. So that felt like that was important. And it was done through Breaking Bars, but it was called Music for Humanity.
Okay.
So we did 2 events of that, and we kind of just took a step back, and it was like, right, it felt like the right time to bring Breaking Bars back. It was never going to fizzle out. You know, naturally things come to an end, but with Breaking Bars, it feels different, it feels special, and it feels like it can grow.
Sustainable.
It can go anywhere.
Yeah,
the message is clear,
right,
and the energy is just great. So we've worked with so many artists now that we're kind of we're going to have to start recycling and go back to ones that we worked with in 2022 or 21. You know,
you've got places like this, Reform, that always training artists through. You've got University of Salford. I mean, that's just one uni, but there's so much talent. I've noticed that once I've actually started networking and putting myself out there, everyone, there's so much talent in Manchester. There's so much talent everywhere, but speak to people, get connections is my opinion. Breaking Bars is on Instagram, isn't it? So
Breaking Bars MCR, and then the
MCR.
football page is Len Johnson MCR.
Right, perfect. So get following both of them guys.
Quick plug.
I'm Neenagh Talks, and this is Lamin Touray. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll let you have that.
No, tell me again.
No, Lamin Touray.
Lamin Touray.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. I got it right this time. Plug yourself. Any more plugs?
Yeah, I mean, just follow us. Follow the Len Johnson campaign on. We've got a website now. I sent it yesterday.
Okay.
So lenjohnsoncampaign.co.uk, and everything's on there. Everything to do with the campaign, any progress. You know, the site of the location that we're getting confirmed very soon with the council and the planning team. We've commissioned the artist to do the statue. There's big progress with that. Breaking Bars will be growing, the Len Johnson celeb match will be growing, and the story will just keep spreading. We'll keep spreading the story, and he will become a household name in Manchester in the next, I don't know, I'll probably be about 40 by the time it happens. But
you never know.
Yeah, it's taken a lot of time, but it's worth it. So we'll be there.
Well, we appreciate all the work that you have done and are doing, and we invite everybody really to do the same. The time is now. Everybody get active, get involved. Life is for living, and what is important to you is important to a lot of other people. So just make sure you're connecting
100%.
with that. You don't want to go to your grave thinking about the things you didn't do. If you go give a piece of advice to younger versions of yourself, or a message sort of.
I think you've said it there, yeah. You can do it. If you feel passionate about something, pursue it, be relentless, and just push, speak to people, communicate as best as you can, and just be honest and be authentic.
Right. That's it.
And I think you'll be all right. But I think you've just got to, if you feel strongly about something, push it as far as you can. Don't, resilience is key, I think.
Yeah.
It's got to be resilient.
And like you said, authenticity.
Yeah.
I think one of my guests, Coyote, said authenticity is the currency. And I was like, jeez.
Yeah, I sent her a message saying that is bars.
It's bars. I was like, power. So we'll end on that note. I really hope you have enjoyed listening today and you've taken something educational, inspiring, and do give us a follow and follow the journey. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on as well. Big up you for giving us the platform to talk about this.
All right. It's just the conversations that we had. So thank you for listening. It's been NOSIS, a special with Lamin from Breaking Bars, supporting Len Johnson. Thank you guys. See you next time.
Peace.